I'm cleaning my PC today, so I'm gonna show you my rig, and also I want to talk about how happy I am with this gaming PC, and if I am considering in getting a 4090. So I'm cleaning like this with air. So I have a 3080 and a 5800 X3D. So you see this monstrous cooler. This cooler is ridiculous, man. Just huge. I just like how it looks. It's amazing. I'm not big into how the PC looks because I mean this chassis I have cost me like $33. So this is like a Chinese chassis. I don't care about looks, but this cooler does look very impressive, and it gets the job done. And I have the 3080 12 gigabytes, so it's a 5800 X3D, and I have the RAM that you cannot even see it because of the cooler. It's so huge. The RAMs are 3600 DDR4 3600 CL16, and I have an X570 Asus Tuf. So the GPU, I'm gonna show you at the end of the video with the camera on the hand so you can see better the GPU. But this is the Asus Tuf, which is a great model because the temperatures are amazing. The only thing I don't like about this GPU, it does have a little bit of a coil whine. So when you play at like 120 frames, you hear it sometimes. Depending on the game, you can hear that. That's why I am using here two PCIe ports instead of one, cables instead of one, because that reduces the coil whine a little bit. So the coil whine is like a low frequency noise, and it's super annoying, but it's not that bad. And so the first time I tried just one cable to power both ports, it was more annoying. But after I tried two cables and two different ports on the power supply, it reduces the coil whine a little bit. So this GPU, aside from that, this GPU is fantastic. I mean, it's always less than 70 degrees, which is amazing. The CPU, even with this gigantic cooler, it throttles. Like I get over 80 degrees. When you get to up to 91 degrees, the frequency is going to throttle. But it's like 4.1 gigahertz, and that only happens if I am installing something like a game that requires a CPU, that because it's decompressing files or doing something heavy with the CPU and gaming at the same time, which I can do because this CPU is super powerful. But for during gaming, the CPU is 70 degrees. It's okay. It doesn't matter. I mean, 80 degrees on the CPU like this is normal. But yeah, it does require this monstrous cooler because that 5800 X3D gets pretty hot. So let me share with you, how happy I am with this gaming rig, and if I'm thinking in getting the 4090. So, two things, okay? One, if I am going to get another GPU, here's the problem. I cannot give this GPU to my nephew because I'm not gonna sell it. I don't do that. So what I would do is to give this GPU to my nephew, but the problem is that to do that, I would need to purchase an entire PC because my nephew, his computer has a 2600, a Ryzen 5 2600 with a 1660 Super, and that CPU is not good enough for this GPU. So it's not going to do a lot of good things for him. So I would need to give him the entire computer, and it is not time yet to upgrade the entire computer. So that's the problem number one. That's why I'm not going to just upgrade the GPU. I'm just gonna use this PC until I need a new one, and then I'm just gonna get an entire system. That's problem number one. And problem number two is that 4090 based on the rumors, and we are very close, so the information we're getting is already very close to the truth. It is consuming too much power. The power supply I have on this PC is a 750 watts Seasonic, 80 plus gold, and it is a very good power supply, but it's not enough for the 4090. They are saying it is going to go over 660 watts if you max out the power limit, which is just the GPU, which is insanity. It's too much. For example, let's say the leaks are wrong and it's gonna be like, 500 watts, okay, let's say, or it's 450 even. This GPU right now is consuming, when I overclock the GPU, I always overclock the GPU, is like 360 watts. And that is pumping a lot of heat on this small room that I have. And I am on a very cold weather here. So during the winter, this is not a joke. I'm not joking. I'm telling you, during the winter, I do not need to turn on the heater on this room. It's not a joke. I know that's something that people say, just joking. I'm telling you, I do not need to turn on the heat, because between the CPU and the GPU, the heat, it gives me enough. It gives me a perfect temperature here, and this gets below zero during the winter. So it's just what it is. So if I see that with 360 watts just on the GPU, I cannot. It doesn't make any sense to do 600 watts just on this GPU. So the entire system is going to consume like 800 watts, over 800 watts. Because right now this entire system I have consumes 550 watts. And the reason I know that is because I'm using a backup, power supply, a backup power supply, and it gives me that information. I have an APC backup power supply, so I know the power consumption. So yeah, it would be too much. So here's the thing: how happy I am with this gaming rig right now. I'm very happy actually, and I am already getting limited by the CPU, and this CPU is one of the best right now for gaming. So for example, the new Unreal Engine 5 is gonna be used in most games. So that Unreal Engine 5, they are the developers are acknowledging that it has a CPU utilization problem. That's why they haven't released the engine yet. So I tested the Matrix demo, that city sample, on the PC, and it drops down to 30 frames per second because of the CPU. So it doesn't matter how much I lower the resolution. The problem is the CPU, and this is one of the most powerful CPUs right now on the market. So for me, in my opinion, it doesn't make a lot of sense to upgrade the GPU only, because I can only think in a few games, like for example Watch Dogs Legions. Watch Dogs Legions is being bottlenecked by the CPU, 5800X3D, and it's being bottlenecked by the CPU. So the reason I know that is because I use MSI Afterburner to see the numbers, and I see, for example, I'm getting 80 to 90 frames. The GPU is at 88%, for example, and when you see that behavior, you're getting bottlenecked by the CPU. So getting a more powerful GPU is not gonna make that better. You're only gonna be able to raise the resolution and the fidelity of the game, but you're not gonna be able to get a higher frame rate. So I don't have any reason for it. So there are only a few games that are going to benefit from that. Games that are not CPU heavy, like, I don't know, Horizon Zero Dawn, which I already beat. So yeah, that's the other problem. So right now I don't have any game that I would for example, Cyberpunk, you max out ray tracing, all of that, and this CPU is good enough for that. But I don't care about the ray tracing on Cyberpunk because I don't see a big difference, and I don't like that game anyway. So it would be really a waste of money. But if you have the money and you don't care, you just care about best, and maybe you have a 1080 Ti, for example. If you have a 1080 Ti, you get a 3080. That's gonna be huge, and especially if you have an LG C1 or one of these OLED TVs, you definitely want to upgrade. So if you have like a 2060 Super, maybe a 2070, and you really want to push that 120 4K, even with DLSS, yeah, get the 4080. That's gonna make a lot of sense. Even the 4070 is gonna be very good. It's gonna be about the same performance probably as this 3080, so that would make sense. But having a 3080 or 3080 Ti, this is the 12 gigabytes model, I would not do it. I'm just gonna wait maybe until the next generation of consoles. And once the next generation of consoles come, we're gonna see new, more powerful engines, and the games are gonna be looking a lot better. Then I'm just gonna get an entire new PC. But I wanna use this one. And then after I get the new one, then I'm gonna give this one to my nephew, and he's gonna be over the moon with this. This PC is gonna still be very powerful for a very long time, especially with DLSS. DLSS works very well because on these LG OLEDs, once you get black frame insertion in both, everything is just up to the next level. So it doesn't matter that you have to lower the internal resolution with DLSS. If you move the camera and everything looks sharp and you don't lose resolution in movement, that is just so much better, and it is worth it. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I'm not gonna get the 4090 because I'm not going to sell this one. I cannot give it to my nephew by itself. That's why I'm not gonna get it. But if you have 3070, let's say you have a 3070, you are I can use a little bit more performance. Get the 4080 maybe. But yeah, usually I would like to get for an upgrade more than 50% more performance. So if I can get at the same power level, so same power, I can get more than 50% performance, maybe that makes sense. Ideally, you want to get 60-70% more performance for the change to be worthwhile. But yeah, I'm gonna show you the PC closer. I always keep it clean with these things. I'm gonna show it to you closer so you can take a look. I like a lot this GPU. The cooling is very good, and it's quiet. The fans, it does have a little bit of coil whine noise, and I love this CPU cooler a lot. So yeah, let me show you. So you see the monstrous cooler and the GPU. I like this GPU a lot because it is metal. Like, it is all metal. This is metal. There's no plastic on the GPU. It's metal here, metal on the back plate. The cooling is just fantastic. You see all the thermal pads. You see the thermal pads in between the PCB. So this is the PCB and this is the back plate. You see thermal pads there in between. So because that back plate is metallic, it helps with the cooling too. We have the BIOS switch here. We can switch to an OC BIOS and a quiet, silent BIOS. We have that whole pass-through flow pass-through. Got some LEDs here only, which I'm not a big fan of LEDs. Actually, I hate them. I turned that off completely because that affects the image quality that you see on the screen with all those colorful lights. And that's the motherboard. That's the Asus X570 motherboard. You cannot see it because the cooler and the GPU are so huge. This is a Noctua, for example, of course, with those fans. If you're familiar with Noctua, you know they are the best in air coolers. So yeah, and I have a lot of I have an M.2, so I have an M.2, and I have so I have a 1 terabyte SSD, a 500 gigabytes M.2, and 2 terabytes hard drive, 1 terabyte hard drive, and a 500 one drive, and another 2 extra storages, like external drives. So yeah, I have a lot of storage in that. They are all full of games. So yeah, that's my PC. I do have the cable management. It is acceptable. And by the way, I don't use the. I always have the PC laid down like this, because if I do this, the GPU is going to sag a little bit, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's going to sag because there's no support. This is another thing I don't like about this GPU. There's no support here in between this plate. So between this and this part of the GPU, there's no support. You see, it's open. So because of that, the GPU is going to sag. It's going to, when you lay it down like this, it's going to sag. So it would be better if it was triple slot and this part was joined together. That's a small detail. I don't care. I just lay it down like this, and it's working very nice.